Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek through Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Volume 17, Chapter 13. And once again, done. Another volume down. Hopefully we get everything in this specific Mushoku Monday. I think it's going to be pretty well. I thought there was only 14 chapters. Apparently there's an extra chapter. As people don't know, I don't look at really any information around the chapter counts and everything like that. Yes, I get a breakdown of where the images go, but that's about the only indication I have. I don't like to look at anything besides the text until I'm told that I'm allowed to look at anything else. So I didn't really know that there was an extra chapter, question mark, until I actually got to it. So really excited to dive into that because I think that's going to be most of this video. It's like literally like a page. But yeah, it's probably going to be a bunch of stuff to go through. But yeah, as per usual, thank you everybody that dropped by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Happy Mushoku Mondays. Thank you everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, Gearless, Noah, Kusha last week. I think that's everybody. Thank you guys so much for your super chats. Really greatly appreciate it. It means so much to me, you guys. If you cannot support monetarily, do not worry. I don't want people to actually pay out more than they're capable of. If you're able to donate, it helps out a great deal, but I don't want people to kind of extend themselves. It's everything, just being here, telling other people about it, hitting the like button. That is the easiest way that you can support the channel. Hit that like button. I'm always heartbroken that at the end of Mushoku Monday, despite how many viewers we get, it's just there's so many that don't like to hit that like button. And there's people that hit the dislike button. What is the deal with that? It's like I probably say something they don't like, or they just probably don't like Mushoku. They probably just don't like Mushoku Tensei, so they immediately just hit dislike and they leave the video. Like, you stupid Mushoku Monday. Forget this stupid premiere thing. I'm on anime only. I don't like this. Whatever the case is, it breaks my heart. I'll live, though. I appreciate you guys so much, though. Everything that you guys do, it makes a great deal to me. This is literally the thing that I look forward to every single week. And even though it's a lot of work, it's just so rewarding. You guys are so fantastic. The kind words, additionally, with the likes, it means a great deal to me. So, with all the mushy stuff out of the way, let's get into this. Let's get into chapter 13 and finish up this volume and move on to 18. I don't know. I don't think I've heard anyone say anything about 18. So maybe it's a bummer of a volume. I guess technically since everything's kind of resolved, I have my theory still, but I think since everything's resolved, maybe 18 is supposed to be a slice of life, and typically nobody... Shrug, I guess. Refugin doing slice of life. We'll see. He could blow me away. We'll see. Anyways, though. Chapter 13. Farewells and changes. On the day of their planned departure, Ghislaine came to visit. Oh my gosh, I forgot about this. Hopefully it doesn't get me emotional on here. She had brought 3 wooden swords with her. She didn't explain her reason for visiting, but she really didn't need to. Edis and Rudius both took a sword, got dressed, and headed out back. The mansion's backyard was relatively large, but also full of flower beds, making it cramped. Still, they had enough space for their purpose. Edis and Rudius faced Ghislaine with their swords in hand. A bleary-eyed Sylphie looked on from a chair nearby. The maids were already hard at work, but shooting puzzling glances at them as well. Let's begin the training session. With that, they began their practice swings. The silent morning filled with wooden blades slicing audibly through the air. Rudius' swings less clean than Edis or Ghislaine, but Ghislaine didn't yell criticism. Back in the day, she used to shout out to him, keep his arms tight, and watch the tip of his sword. Maybe she wasn't going to bother this day. Yeah, I don't think she really wants to make it a bad It's so interesting that Ghislaine actually thinking through this stuff. It's like you want to give her some credit, but at the same time, you're like, it's Ghislaine, though. She probably is... There's a side of me that's like, Ghislaine is doing this because she's just trying to do this one last training session, play on that nostalgia. And yes, she might not want to, like, ruin the whole scene by being, like, overly corrective to Rudius. But there's also the more simple side of Ghislaine that I always kind of remember, and that it's probably just more the fact that she's focused on Edis. Or additionally, just knows that Rudius is never going to protect the sword. Like, it's not his focus, but I'm going to make him a part of it anyways. I want to do this one last session. It's getting to me already. Rudius, stay focused. Right. Apparently he was wrong. Still, she wasn't saying anything about his stance. He guessed that he had that part down solid, at least. He'd been practicing his swing and basic forms regularly for years now. So maybe he improved significantly. At 200 swings, Ghislaine cut them off. Rudius could see sweat on both their foreheads. While 200 swings wasn't that much for them, they used all their strength in every one. It wasn't about numbers. Still, they weren't breathing hard or anything. Neither was Rudius. This was all just a warm-up. Next was forms. Ghislaine started with Swift Wind. Edis and Rudius lifted their swords and began to practice set motions of the sword god forms. He didn't hesitate. These were the fundamental movements of this style, and he knew them by heart. He even taught them to Norn and Renoa, and was training with Edis ever since marrying her. Ghislaine then called them to pair off. Edis and Rudius faced off against each other. In Kendo, you supposedly had the less skilled partner go on the attack, but they always had Edis swing at Rudius instead. That's just how they'd done it back when they were kids, and they stuck with it even after marriage, which I think is a good thing. Because if Rudius has, at this point has kind of established, I'm never going to actually be a swordsman. I can't do a battle aura, and battle aura is essential in order to get to that point. Now, yes, in the future, he could figure out some way of, I mean, he did it with the whole thing with the suit. He made a mecha suit. And with that mecha suit, that gave him a battle aura. And thus, he could technically go on the offense, which he did sort of do some of that in his fight with Orsted. But yeah, I think it's pretty much established that he's not going to be the swordsman. So just being on the defense is actually a better thing for him, to learn how to defend himself against a sword, even though he's doing it with a sword in his hand. After being signaled, Edis went on the offense. She was sticking with standard practice forms, so her movements weren't impossibly fast. Her sword moved just slow enough that Rudius could respond, and she would stop her movements just before she struck him. The Sword God style didn't teach you how to do that. When they were kids, Edis was constantly smacking him when practicing, but things were different now. She had learned a lot since then. She doesn't want to hurt you. She doesn't want to hurt you. Well, I think there is an aspect of being able to control, too. Being able to stop the blade at that point is actually a very smart thing. Now, with a Sword God style, I don't necessarily see that being a thing. Like, they're not going to teach you, well, okay, you need to know when to stop as well. No, it's literally destroy your target. But there is a positivity to that. What if you're bringing down a sword and you're told to stop? Or maybe possibly you get your target wrong and you know how to stop so you don't hit your target. I don't know. Switching roles, Rudius was totally ineffective with his attacks. The difference in their skill was obvious. He could have done slightly better if he relied on his Eye of Foresight, but he didn't activate it. This is where it's like, yeah, confirming that Rudius is picking up on what she's stepping on. He's smelling what Ghislaine's stepping in. He sees what she's putting down. I don't know. I messed up my phrases. I'm sorry. He hadn't gained that power back when he was in Fatoa, so he wasn't going to use it. He's reliving the good old days. Ghislaine then stopped them. Normally, they move on to free-form sparring sessions, but he couldn't be much of a competition for Edis. Instead, Ghislaine signaled Rudius to step aside, and she took his place. Facing off against her student, Ghislaine raised her sword behind her waist. This will be the last time, Edis. Right. Edis lifted her sword above her head. It was a stance she never used when she was practicing with Rudius. I thought she did that strike. I'm guessing that's the position for the Sword of Light. And I think she did that with him. Though it could be that she's not using Sword of Light when they're practicing. He did ask her to use it, but yeah. Ghislaine would be drawing and attacking in one motion, while Edis would be swinging downward with all of her might. It made for quite a contrast. The world seemed to stop moving entirely, and time itself slowed to a crawl. Cold sweat trickled down Rudius' back, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were holding real swords in their hands. I can see that. I can see that, like, that fiercity of the two of them. It's like, I think it's in that matter. It's like, it doesn't matter. They have said before that these strikes, even with a wooden sword, can kill. I would imagine only those with a battle aura that could actually fend off the damage would actually live. This time, there'll be no formal signal. A loud smack reverberated through the air. They moved so quickly, Rudius couldn't follow. All he got to see was the end result. Edis and Ghislaine were standing there with their swords outstretched to each other. The only real difference was that Ghislaine's blade was broken at the base. Edis' sword slightly bent while resting on her master's neck. Well, there's the final. Now, Ghislaine could have given. I don't see Ghislaine doing that. I don't see Ghislaine, like, giving her a win. Now, again, this is one of those things where I don't give her enough credit. Again, going by the basics that Ghislaine doesn't like to think things through, likes things simple, doesn't want to overthink things. Yes, technically she will be wanting to just train like they usually do. But there is a side of me that, yeah, you could. I don't think she would do that to Edis too. I think that would be disrespectful to Edis if she were to allow her to win. I think this is our first sign of what I was kind of speculating about way back here. Is Edis stronger than Ghislaine? Even the Sword God himself said you can face off against Ghislaine, and if you beat her, you'll get that title. But they didn't do it then because she didn't care about a title. I think this is that sign finally of who's actually gotten stronger. Now, in an actual battle, when it's not face to face, who could get the jump on the other person? That's all a question mark. But I think they would both be ready when that time comes, that it would be the same situation. So yeah, either way, it's still interesting. They stayed in that position for a moment before slowly lowering the weapons. For some reason, Edis had a little scowl on her face. Ghislaine, with a solemn expression, nodded to her student. that concludes our training session. Thank you very much. Looking to Edis, Rudius noticed her head was still lowered. She was biting her lip. Her forehead was all crinkled up and her cheeks trembling. Well then, Lady Edis, farewell. Please take care of yourself, master. Edis looked up with tears swimming in her eyes before bowing her head. Ghislaine didn't say anything else. She gave Rudius one last meaningful look before walking away without a word. He was confident that her glance was her asking him to look after Edis for her. Rudius bowed to Ghislaine one last time, bending deeply at the waist. She was a woman who taught him the ways of the sword. A woman who kept Edis safe for many years. He couldn't thank her enough for that, really. The instant Ghislaine passed out of view, Edis broke down in tears, crying so loudly everyone in the block could hear her. Ugh, I swear they're flagging this. I'm still going on my theory that this turning point hasn't happened yet, and that the man god is still going to attack Ariel after Rudius and Orsted leave. And I didn't note it back in my last video because I completely, for some reason, at that time forgot about Ghislaine. I even put a little image of Ghislaine coming in the picture saying, "You forgot about me." But yeah, with this goodbye, it really feels like they're flagging Ghislaine. Like this is the last time Edis will ever see her, because it even compounds it later on when they find out that they can technically get back pretty quickly. Like, they could just go through the teleports. Edis is mad because she had this tearful goodbye. And Rudius, even at that point, I think, says something to the effect of, but I'm still glad that she was able to do that. She needed to say goodbye, kind of thing. They're going their separate ways, essentially. But I think that's also a thing of, like, yeah, that gives Edis at least that tearful goodbye. Because, again, I still think that something's going to happen. My current theory is that Volume 18 opens up with Turning Point and Ariel's dead. And yes, Ghislaine would probably be included in that because she'd be defending Ariel. We'll see though. Gonna put that theory to rest until it actually happens. I've talked about it enough. But no, that is sad. That was actually a very cute little scene here. Kind of just seeing that same, like in my head, it played out literally the scenario at Saros' mansion. Them just training out in the courtyard. Just exchanging blows, and then, yeah, doing all their training. And then, yes, following it up with literally Ghislaine saying, one last duel. I have nothing else to teach you. She's literally saying, I have nothing else to teach you, but she doesn't say that because Ghislaine doesn't really... she's a few words. She said enough here. You're lucky if you get grunts from her. Later that morning, visitors came to say farewell to Sylphie. Many of them were nobles of the Ariel's faction who knew Silent Fitz. They didn't know that she was a woman, and seemed quite surprised to learn that she was married to Rudius. Sylphie kept a smile on her face as they expressed their gratitude and bid her farewell, but Rudius could tell that she was mostly just being polite. Afterwards, she sighed and muttered about how all these formalities wore her out. Even at this point, like, she's still not used to that whole thing, which I find kind of a little funny in that regard. Like, no matter how long she's spent with Ariel, she's still not used to it. And plus, a lot of it is that they're directed at her. And typically when they're in a group and she's with Ariel, most people are communicating to Ariel. So it's different. I can see that. However, her face lit up with genuine happiness when Elmoy and Cleone showed up. They were close friends, and their goodbyes were long and tearful. The last visitor was Luke, who only dropped by for about 15 minutes. His role as Ariel's right-hand man and liege lord of a region meant that he was getting busier by the day, but he found time to slip by and say goodbye. Still, he had a hard time looking Sylphie in the eyes at first. Probably still feeling guilty. Yeah, you kind of goofed up, Luke. You kind of goofed up. He shows up, he's like, please don't kill me, Sylphie. Please don't kill me. Sylphie, take care of yourself, all right? Yeah, I will. I'm sorry about the way I tested you like that. At the very end, after all these years. It's okay, Luke. I know how anxious you were. I'm still not sure what I would have done if he really tried to hurt Princess Ariel either. Right. Well, thank you. You're welcome. I'm not sure what for, though. I think giving him clarity. Again, that was what I was kind of pointing out. He was in his head trying to figure out if he can support Ariel in that situation, and literally, Sylphie gave him a comparison to go by. I am going to follow Rudius. I don't care who's behind him. I'm going to support him, and that was the same for Luke. I'm going to support her no matter who's backing her. Backing her is what I signed up for. You have a point. The two cracked up about that before Luke took a moment to consider his next words. Look, Sylphie, if you ever decide that you can't stay with Rudius anymore, come find me. Rudius was shocked by that. Was he proposing marriage to his wife in front of him? What are you talking about? I'm never going to leave Rudy. And it's not like I'd marry you even if I did. I'm not talking about getting married. All I'm saying is, if you ever find yourself no place to go, LA, Clea, and I will always be here for you. I think I've heard LA. I don't think I've ever seen them say Clea. All these shorts. Some very interesting short nicknames. He sounded firm and sincere. While romantic at first, maybe he was just meaning it in a platonic way. I think Ariel had mentioned that before too. Like, yeah, it was after the duel. After the duel with Luke, I think she mentioned something about that it's not a platonic thing. Like, he really does care for Sylvie, just in a platonic way. Still, a few suspicious beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Had Luke been carrying a flame for Sylvie all this time? What happened to only liking busty women? Perhaps it was his way of warning Rudius to treat her right. Rudius himself knew that he had to work on that. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'll definitely come to visit you guys, at least. Of course, you're always welcome here. Thanks, Luke. You take care of yourself, too. This is much more low-key than Edis and Ghislaine's farewell. It wasn't like they weren't going to see each other again, right? There's that. Where the flacking? They'll never see each other again, right? Because, yeah, Luke's going to be right there with Ghislaine. They keep in touch, at least. Rudius, I'm sorry that I was so suspicious of you on our journey here. That's all right, Luke. I know my behavior was a little shady at times. Luke was misled by the man god, but Rudius also acted genuinely suspicious as well. Even if he knew there was a good chance that Luke was a disciple, he'd share in some of the blame either way. I like that. That's something I've always liked about Rudius, always seeing the other side. I'm that type. I am that type. I always like to see the other side of people's situation. Like, if somebody just comes at me about something, it's like, okay, let me see that side. Yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from, kind of thing. And I think Rudius loves to do that. Again, he never got much. He never got much in the way of people seeing his side of his life in his old life. And so I think that ingrained in his mind to understand people more. Anyways, it's your job to be a little paranoid, right? I'm glad you see it that way. Luke scratched his cheek and offered an embarrassed smile. My offer stands for you as well, Rudius. If that stick of a girl ever loses her appeal for you, come pay me a visit. We've got plenty of maids with curves in the right places. Luke flinched at her anger in her voice, chuckling softly. Only joking. Luke hopped on a pure white steed with a look of a Prince Charming. Rudius, look after Sylvie for us. Sylvie, take care. With those words, he rode off like there was a damsel to be rescued. Rudius is like, he's looking so good getting up on that thing. Luke just knows how to pull that off. Rudius thought Luke was a jerk at first meet, but if Paul had behaved himself, and they had grown up together in the Notos family, maybe Luke and he could have been close friends. I like that. That's a nice conclusion to Luke. I mean, I've had my frustrations with Luke. He just seems like the ladies' man, and it's really hard for me personally to empathize with a ladies' man. I assume there's going to be probably something underneath that facade. There was going to be something else to him besides that, because Refugion's just good at that. He's good at having multiple sides to his characters. His characters aren't just the sum of what they give you. And even characters that just jump up and they're bad guys for like literally a chapter and disappear, like Rada, there's always some other side to it where I'm like, I actually empathize with this character. I understand where they're coming from. I understand why they're doing what they're doing. And maybe in Weetaw. I guess if Weetaw never got anything for him. Poor little Weetaw. He just turned into a little donut and disappeared. But no, I like this whole segment. So when it comes to Sylvie, I wouldn't put it past him that he grew to like her. But I think that's probably something of it would probably more in the realm of just a strong friendship. He cares a lot for her, but I don't think we never got an indication of love for her. Like actual, like, romantic love, I guess, is a way to put it. Now, yes, you have these comments about her chest size and stuff like that, but that's not the sum of a romance. I mean, yes, it helps. But that doesn't indicate to me, him saying that her chest size is so small, doesn't tell me anything. That just tells me his actual bodily preferences, not necessarily his love for somebody. Yes, I can see Luke caring for Sylvie a lot. They've been through a lot together. They're the bros. Fitz and Luke, the bros, protecting Ariel this whole time. There is definitely a bond there. I mean, it was sort of pointed out when Rudius first came there to propose that he would marry Sylvie. You seen that friendly bout. Even Rudius was getting jealous. These two are throwing insults at each other, and he knows it's because they're so close. We get that sense they're so close. But romantically, I don't think so. I don't think that Luke was romantically interested in Sylvie. I guess it's more the fact that we never really get to see a side of his love. The only chapter that we get with his inner dialogue is literally this one segment where he's confused. Him holding Ariel with a blade, he's confused. That's our only indication there whatsoever. So I don't think that's a good indication because he had his focus somewhere else. But that was our only focus. So we can only really draw conclusions from the outside looking in. I don't see it being there, but I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. There's nothing indicating that he couldn't have fallen in love with Sylphie. Now, it could have been, even though most of the signs were pointing at Luke dueling Rudius to find out if he's strong enough to protect Sylphie. But again, in that regard, I think Ariel indicated that she discussed it with Luke beforehand. Well, maybe they had to, because she literally asked Rudius to do it. So she had to know that he was doing it for whatever reason. Now, she couldn't have known the full reason why he wanted to do it. But even there, Ariel was saying it's platonic. Like, they're friends. And he's testing you kind of thing. So, but that could have been, Luke didn't tell Ariel that he was actually essentially trying to beat Rudius to put him down in order to take Sylphie away. Who knows? But I do like the fact that in the end, he's sort of kind of, I don't think he really does care for Rudius enough that he'd be like, yeah, come by to our estate. He's just really saying that just to get at Sylphie. I think that last comment about him accepting Rudius in is to get at Sylphie. I don't think he really cares about Rudius enough that if Sylphie and Rudius got in a fight and they broke up, I don't think if Rudius showed up at his door, he's going to be like, yeah, come on in here, I got some maids. He don't care. He's like, okay, get the hell out of here. Where's Sylphie? Let me take care of Sylphie. But yeah, in the end, it was a very cute send-off of Luke, at least. With that, farewells were complete, and with the help of Petagoose, their return to home would be brief. At some point, Petagoose had created a new teleportation circle in the royal palace. From there, they would transport to the floating fortress, and then to outside of Shariah. Journey from there would be half a day. Unlike the trip down, return to Ashra would be a breeze, being able to take this new route in a single day if they wanted to. Telling Edis about this, she punched Rudius. What the heck? I cried like an idiot over nothing. Again, she had these big farewells, and then he's like, oh yeah, by the way, we can get back pretty quick, so if you wanted to, it'll only take a day. Personally, Rudius felt it was good that she'd done her big goodbyes with Ghislaine. Geographically, they might be mere days' travel, but they still gone their separate ways. It was a shame to spoil that beautiful memory, though. Edis didn't cry often. Again, I think it is a good thing for her. I agree with Rudius here in the idea that it is good for this because it sort of allows her, in her mind at that point, before she finds out about this, she has said goodbye. Like, I am on my own. They've gone their separate ways. She mentally has disconnected from Ghislaine. This is our parting. And yes, finding out later, I can just get back to her really quickly, but I've done it, though. I've done my farewells. And flags, yes. It occurred to Rudius at this point that Ghislaine probably jumped to the same conclusion. The two of them are pretty similar in that respect. One of these days, they'd have to pop up out of nowhere and surprise her. Of course, Petagoose probably would get irritated if they started breezing through his castle for no real reason. They'd have to keep it strictly to business. Yeah, you can't overuse the teleport. He'd get mad. But, come to think of it, it would be useful to have some emergency travel options of their own. Orsted probably knew how to draw teleportation circles, right? Maybe they could create some sort of direct routes to Asra and the other major countries. Apart from convenience, the man god wouldn't be able to destroy the circles nobody knew about. He made a mental note to pitch that project to the boss. That's a good point. Now, it is curious because, I mean, I would assume that Orsted can create these teleportation circles. Now, it's odd because Orsted has seemingly not he's going out of his way to go to each one of the teleportation circles, but that could be because they're in hotspots. Again, we know this idea that they either need to be fed some mana or they need to be in like these ley lined areas, basically. And so that's probably why he's never really created his own. Like, why would he go out of his way when he can walk to the next one and just teleport? But it could be that he's not doing it strictly because, one, it costs mana to produce them, or at least feed them if they're not on a ley line. Or two, he could have been creating them. I mean, there's no telling that he has been creating them. A lot of the ones they've used, like going to Begaret and stuff like that, could have been the ones that he created himself. There's no telling. But yeah, that would be really interesting to do. Yes, he does kind of point out here in a minute that it's forbidden, but at the same time, if nobody knows, you're not a criminal until you're caught, essentially. But it would be nice to have some way of being able to get to places quickly or getting out of there quickly. Since teleportation magic was officially forbidden, they made a show of exiting the city before sneaking back into the palace. By the time they made it there, the sun was already setting, so they stayed the night at the floating fortress. Yeah, this is still one of those weird things, and I mean, they've noted it before, this idea that they always give these big shows for leaving, but in entering, it doesn't really matter because nobody knows they're really coming in most cases. But it is like one of those things that somebody at some point is going to go, you're traveling really fast. Somebody's going to finally take note of it. He's getting around to places really quickly. Edis, Sylphie, and Rudius shared a single room. Returning with only 3 of them put Rudius in a melancholy mood. He thought the 2 of them joined him in bed for a little physical affection. But Edis tended to be a little awkward and hesitant when it wasn't just the 2 of them. Struggling to fall asleep, Rudius snuck out of bed and found a seat, letting his thoughts wander. As he watched the flames in the fireplace flicker, he reflected on the events of the last few weeks. He won this battle and beat the man god. He felt fair to call a complete victory, as no one in his party died. They dealt with all the disciples, and Ariel had secured the throne of Asura. Yet, somehow, he didn't feel especially happy or reassured. All he had done was follow the path that Ors had laid out for him. And as crucial as this battle was, it was only the first round in a long war. That's something that you don't really think about too much in the moment of it. He was going to keep fighting battles like this from now on. Stressful, murky battles, where victory brought no real relief. That line punches me, honestly. And the idea that this is a lot of work. This whole journey just for this one battle. Literally, again, it was the real tipping off point is really Sylphie being involved with Ariel, obviously. And then Rudius meeting Sylphie, them falling in love, him sort of being recruited into Ariel's faction at that point. And it kind of got put to the wayside. And then it comes back up. Luke confronts him and says, we got to do something. The time's come. And then, yeah, he goes there to Ariel, and then Ariel brings it up. And they start heading off into Asura. Well, they have to do the whole thing with Pedagus, but then they head off to Asura. And then they get to Asura, and they have this big battle, and lives are at stake. And at the end of it, it all completes. He got a mansion out of it, yes. He's got connections now. He's got a royalty, future royalty, to prove his figurine selling. But where's the relief? It's not done. It's one battle of many. And this is a battle that's going to be going on, presumably at this point in his mind, for the rest of his life. It's not going to conclude anytime soon. I'm gonna grow old and die, and it's going to continue on, possibly even beyond my life. I'm never going to feel a completion of this. I'm never really gaining anything from this. I'm just putting my life and the ones that I love at stake here. That's all I'm doing. As he says, what had I even accomplished this time? Now, yes, he technically takes it in a different direction, which I do like as well, but I do, again, that segment jumps out. Where he takes it here in a minute is, what had I even accomplished this time? Ariel had solved half of my problems. I'd nearly gotten Edis killed, and Orsted even had to step in to deal with Rada. I'm not seeing much ground for optimism here. I did nothing. I had to rely on other people. And I like how that eventually gets into, yes, finally, Rudius is going, I need to wake up. I need to wake up. Even though he keeps falling back, he keeps saying, I gotta wake up. We'll get into that later. Rudy, you still up? Yeah. It's the middle of the night, you know. Slipping out of bed, Sylphie took a seat next to him, cuddling up closely and leaning her head on his shoulder as he wrapped his arms around her. They said nothing for a while, her body warm, maybe even hot enough to be running a fever. As their gaze met, he thought of kissing her, but she spoke up. You know, when I quit my job as Ariel's bodyguard, it was like all the air went out of me. All I could do was just sit there and think, wow, it's really over, huh? Something like relief showed on her face. Sylphie had been Princess Guardian for 8 years, from the age of 10 to the age of 18. She spent her entire adolescence with Luke and Ariel, so she had to be feeling a sense of loss right now. True. That's literally almost half of her life. Well, I would argue more than half of her actual life, because most people, I mean me anyways, I don't remember much of my childhood. And that's like that segment is literally the part that I remember the most. 10 to 18 is huge for a person's life. That's where you're shaping and molding. He wasn't sure he could fill this void for her. Maybe that wasn't his role to play in the first place. He was her husband now, not her friend, and he couldn't replace her friends. I have to agree with that. As a husband, you can be a best friend. And I would see that some people can argue that you're not necessarily a friend. It's a different mindset. It's almost like an addition. Being a husband, you have a lot of the traits of being a friend. But yes, you can't be a friend. A friend can't replace a husband, though. So it doesn't really work in the verse. A husband can have the traits of a friend, but a friend can't have the traits of a husband, basically, is the best way to put it. But you know, Rudy, I did think this through beforehand. Up until now, I was so busy with Princess Ariel that I barely spent any time looking after Lucy. So I like to stay home with her from now on. Her expression was more confident than he expected. Our baby's getting bigger by the day, you know. I'm sure she's going to need a lot more attention soon. She nuzzled her head against his shoulder, and he ruffled her hair affectionately. Her head seemed a little hotter than usual, though he might have been imagining it. This kept popping out, and my mind kept saying, I know what they're doing here. They're having Sylphie's getting hot, like she wants some action. But it's like it keeps pointing out fever, she's way too hot, whatever, and then it doesn't actually lead into something. It does technically lead into tempting it, but it's Rudius taking action. It's not necessarily Sylphie jumping in there on him or anything like that. So, like, the entire time, I'm like, we're not, like, flagging something coming up, are we? That she suddenly has this fever and it turns out to be something else? Like, is it actually something like Laplace is awakening inside of her and she's suddenly going to get taken over or something like that? What is this fever? We don't do well with sickness in this series. Like, with the whole thing with Roxy and Nanahoshi, we don't do well with sickness in this story. Rudeus, get the detoxification fast. So I think I'll focus on taking care of her. I want to be a good mother for a change, I guess. Rudeus never thought of Sylphie as a bad mother. I never really did either. I mean, besides the whole her leaving in the future diary, this isn't her. This is the future diary self. Besides that whole thing, which was like a big I don't necessarily think I've ever seen an indication that she's a bad mother. And yet, by her own admission, I do agree in the idea that she's constantly away helping Ariel. But as I think I even agree with Rudeus that mentions later on the idea that, I mean, that's sort of typical for this world, like our world. It's typical for a lot of cases of two-income houses, or at least a mother having to work to support the family. So it doesn't really, that doesn't put me off too much. Unless there was some indication that literally she's spending too much time being Ariel's bodyguard, which, yes, could possibly be, because I think when Ghislaine or Ellen Elise, when she stepped up to help out while she was pregnant and everything, I think that was kind of a sign there that she's got somebody to protect her so she can take time away. But yeah, I don't know. But it's always good to want to do better. Rudeus never thought of Sylphie as a bad mother, but by standards of this world, he guessed that you could have called her neglectful. Only nobles let maids raise their kids, and they were just an ordinary family. Still, he wasn't from this world originally. Back in the place that he came from, two-income marriages weren't unusual in the slightest. You know, if there's anything else you want to do, I'm fine with that too. She was only 18. She was considered a full-fledged grown-up in this world, but she was still very young. There was plenty of time for her to find new goals or chase after her dreams. It wasn't like he wanted her to ignore their kid and spend all of her time partying, but it felt like she was juggling taking care of Lucy and pursuing something else. But maybe he wasn't taking their responsibilities to their kid seriously enough. He wasn't exactly the world's best dad himself. Again, I like the seeing the other side of it and acknowledging his own faults and the idea of, like, it's not like I can really argue. I'm not really doing that great either. But again, that goes in that whole thing with Paul. And again, the mindset that I have of fathers in general, it's like there's no book for it. I mean, there's books out there, but they're not really the end-all be-all. It's your own experiences, what you go through, and how you learn how to take care of those children. Knowing that you're neglecting and trying to do better is a positive sign. I'm not sure what that would be, though. I did want to be more like Edis for a while, I guess. Really? What did Edis have that Sylphie wanted? This is so Rudeus, but at the same time, it's such a every reader goes like this moment. It's like, this is literally wrote for every reader to go, oh my gosh, Rudeus, really? Whatever, dude, just be you. Rudeus be Rudy. Big breasts. He likes Sylphie's the way they were. But if she really wanted to work on that, he could give her daily massages. No, wait, he had to take this seriously. Yeah, I mean, she's basically your equal, right? You fight together. She watched your back, and you watch hers. That always made me kind of envious. Yeah, they kind of pointed that out when they were having the girls' meeting, when they were all getting drunk. She was pointing out that fact. Like, she liked the idea that she was able to find it her side. Which, again, it was kind of the oddity because, like, she literally said that. It's one of those things where Sylphie knew that was the place for Edis to be. Like, this is your place. We're doing this. Don't feel envious of that. This is your place. This is how you can support him. She was pushing Edis into that place. That's the perfect place for you. But doesn't stop her from being jealous of it. I can't see that. And I can still see Edis, even though she's got her place now and she's super happy she's got her place, she's still going to feel envious of them doing other things for Rudeus that she can't do. Sylphie paused for a moment. But after that battle with Orsted and how things went this time, I think I finally put that behind me. I'm never going to be a match for Edis. Or for you. He couldn't agree with that, as she was a very talented mage in her own right. She wasn't on Edis' level in combat for sure. But what could you expect? Edis had devoted her entire life to mastering swordplay, and Sylphie had plenty of skills Edis didn't. This was kind of curious because I do want to give Sylphie a little more credit here than what Rudeus is. I mean, Rudeus is being logical about this for sure. I mean, since the point that he separated with Edis, she has been training in the sword, training day and night. That was all she was doing. She was literally spending entire days swinging her sword over and over again. Sylphie as well, ever since the age, I mean, yes, before then she was learning magic and whatnot, but she wasn't learning it for combat. I mean, they even pointed that out in the idea of, it sucks that we can't have these old days before the displacement incident where we just trained magic because we liked magic. But when she was 10, displacement incident happens. From that point on, her magic became combat. And she had to learn how to fight. She had to learn to protect herself. Now, I don't know, and again, to give credit to Rudius, I don't know how much of that was her strictly learning, I need to learn how to use this for killing. She did mention that her magic turned into how can I use this to kill, but it was her literally training herself to protect Ariel. Again, it wasn't like Edis. She wasn't spending day and night training constantly to learn how to use magic. She could have been, it just never covered it. But in that respect, she was learning how to protect herself. She was learning to be a fighter. She literally had no choice. Edis was learning it to stand at Rudius' side. Sylphie was learning to survive. Technically, Edis was learning to survive as well because she was going to fight the horse, because that technically means equal there. So I decided to give up on getting stronger and find a different way to support you. So she wanted to watch his back in ways Edis couldn't. And that led you to this stay-at-home idea? Yep, it sounds like Roxy wants to keep teaching at university. So I'll look after all the kids for our family. I'll make sure that they learn their manners, teach them what I know, and help them grow up safe and strong. Reese felt a mixture of gratitude and guilt. In all likelihood, he wouldn't be able to spend much time taking care of the kids himself. Their battle against the man god wasn't over yet. That meant Orsted was going to keep sending him on missions, dispatching him to far-off places to fight his enemies. You okay with leaving that to me, Rudy? On the other hand, Sylphie had settled on this as her new goal. She found a role to play, and she was ready to move on from one stage of her life to her next. Of course, I know you do a great job. He felt overwhelmed with a sudden affection for his wife. Sylphie was always cute, but right now, she looked even more adorable than usual. Unable to control himself, he kissed her on the lips and went down for a grope on her butt. Suddenly, he froze like a warrior who had met the gaze of Medusa, feeling as if someone was watching him. It was Edis, awake, looking their way with glittering eyes. It wasn't sparkly, happy glitter, but one of an angry tiger. Why was she always watching silently? When she caught him with other girls, it was mildly terrifying. She doesn't want to interrupt, but she's also jealous. You know it's that. You know it's that she doesn't want to interrupt, but she's really jealous. Sorry, I guess we should go to bed for the night. Huh? Yeah, I guess you're right. Heading back to the bed, they would keep romance for when they return home. Pedagus might be spying on them anyhow. Come on, Edis, don't ruin the mood like that. Sorry, but you weren't being all sneaky. No, I wasn't. You're always welcome to join in, you know. Want to give it a try? You can't be serious. That sounds so embarrassing. Rudius felt like it would be more embarrassing for him than anyone else. Edis tended to put him in some borderline humiliating positions. As he nodded off, he heard his wives whispering to each other, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over him. Sylphie had taken a big step forward these last few days. She closed one chapter in her life and found a way to change herself. He needed to learn from her example. With her watching his back, maybe he could find a way to be less fearful of the future. I do really like this. I love this segment. I do love this. And I kind of felt like one of the three girls were going to fall into this category. I had a feeling that one of them was going to fall into the category of being the stay-at-home wife, the one that takes care of the kids. Yes, they do have Lilia, but there is a sense here that I think one of them wanted to take care of them. They're not a noble house. They could do that. They could have Aisha eventually as well step up and be pretty much the one that's taking care of the kids. But I don't think that's the direction that they would want this family to go. I think that one of them would want to be the mom at home, taking care of the kids, always being there for them. And so when I think about it, yes, obviously, I mean, it would have been really interesting to have Edis go in that role. That would be like a massive plot twist. Out of these three girls, Edis turns out to be the one that is like the super nurturing type, the motherly figure. I just didn't see it. Plus, again, she's kind of gone into the role of being the defender, the one that stands at Reese's side. I sort of thought it could have been Roxy. It does sort of feel like, and that's pretty much my mindset from a teacher role. We've seen Roxy being essentially the teacher, helping Rudius learn. She knows how to walk people through the processes and give them knowledge, and that in a lot of cases of the role of a teacher. Teachers in often cases turn out to be very good mothers. You see, there's a lot of cases where, yes, there's a lot of teachers are mothers themselves, and thus they have that nurturing aspect when they're teaching kids, and that's typically for like the younger classes of teachers. They're very nurturing, and thus they know how to kind of take care of kids, knows how to handle them, all that kind of stuff. So Roxy was kind of in that realm, but I don't know. I haven't seen Roxy as a nurturing type yet. I haven't seen her as a motherly type, a nurturing type. So that was kind of like that was a 50-50 for me. Like Edis is like a 1% chance that she would be that one. Roxy was like a 50% chance for me. Sylphie kind of fit that role. There was something about Sylphie that kind of made me feel, and it's probably because the whole thing with like the scenes showing her with like Aisha way back in the day and whatever, seeing those moments. But yeah, at the same time, I don't really have a true sense of her as a nurturing type. She's very doty. She's very lovey, especially around Rudius. So I can kind of see it right there. She's very open and very lovey. So that kind of pushed me in that direction. So I kind of had her as the other half. Like, yeah, it's pretty much 50-50 with Roxy and Sylphie. So this doesn't shock me too much. This is going to be the route that she's going. Plus, again, yes, I agree with her here. It seems like Roxy wants to do this whole teaching thing. She wants to be a teacher. Plus, Roxy has an adventurer's blood in her. I can see her also as well being not very well. I mean, it is surprising that she's become a university teacher when she has that blood in her, but maybe she's had plenty of time dealing with it. She's gotten old enough that she's kind of gotten that out of her system. She no longer really cares about being an adventurer anymore, and she's settled down finally. But yeah, she wants to teach others, and so I can see that her being a teacher kind of being something that's pulling her away from it. So yes, it does make sense of these three girls, one of them has to be it, and yeah, especially since Sylphie has literally completed her task. She's no longer Ariel's bodyguard. She's put a close to that chapter. Where next? And that honestly was a question mark for me when they noted that she did essentially officially quit her job. Oh yeah, that's right. What next? That's right. This chapter is done. What next? The only thing I could think of, and they were starting to allude to it. I want to get stronger. And I was like, yeah, I can see that. I can see her going off and wanting to train to be really strong, and maybe she becomes a really powerful mage. Oh, but yeah, there's also, do I want to focus on being the mother that she felt I'm not doing well enough? I want to focus on that. And I love even at this point, they're even acknowledging the idea that she has room to grow as a mother. Because again, it's got to be pointed out. She was a teenager. She's a teenager still. Yes, by this world standards that they're in, it's an adult, but she's still a teenager. Even still, she is in her teens. She still has her entire life ahead of her, and that's a good route to go. A good route, especially in the fact that she has a child to deal with, a good route to go is that she focuses on that. So it's an interesting thing to kind of go in that route. But again, not too much of a surprise, and I'm super happy for her. I'm happy for Sylphie to find that passion and not play into my fears that she would become distant to becoming a mother and not understand what it's like to be a mother and to follow through with that. Because again, Rudius wanted the kid. He wanted to get her have a bun in the oven. He so badly wanted to put a bun in that oven, and she wanted to give that to him. And there is a fear there of her at a young age getting into that and not realizing what she's getting into, and not herself wanting that child. Rudius wanted that child. Not so much that she wanted to it. Again, I'm just drawing some fears that I had in the direction they can go with our characters, is her not acknowledging that. Not saying that she would, but there is a fear that she could have gone that direction, and they didn't. The direction that Sylphie went is actually a good route, in the idea that she learns and realizes, oh, I want to be that. I want to be that. That's the position I want to be in. I want to be a good mother. And so I want to go in that route. And I like that Rudius is still giving her the option. No, you can do whatever you want. You're still young. You know, you can still go after these things. He's wanting her to be selfish in a sense. Like, I don't want you to give up your life and all of your goals for this thing. What else do you want to do? Again, that option was still there, being stronger, but she chose this. So, cool new chapter for Sylphie. Chapter 14, Home Again. The magic city of Soraya hadn't changed a bit in 2 months they were gone. Well, besides some buildings being finished and some repairs on the city wall, Orsid had guaranteed the safety of his family. So, if he returned and the city was in a smoking pile of ashes, he'd have to start up a labor union on the spot. Rhea smiled at the thought of putting on headbands with Ariel and barging into the boss's office to demand a collective bargaining agreement. Still, the idea seemed less funny if something actually happened in his absence. He was feeling a little relieved to see that everything was fine and same as always. His house not destroyed, or encased in ice, or surrounded by magical thorns. We're home. Welcome back. Opening the door, footsteps pattered from the back of the house. Within seconds, Aisha appeared and threw herself in Rudius' arms. That girl never got any less energetic. Yeah, that's like that initial moment of relief. Okay, everything seems normal so far. Everything's okay. Every time Rudius returns to the house, you're always afraid of something happening. Where's my present? You guys didn't forget, did you? Nope. Edis pulled a box out from her baggage. Here you go. Popping out of Rudius' hug, she accepted it eagerly. Yay! Thanks, Edis. Opening it right away, it was an oval ceramic trinket with a long handle, covered in delicate engravings. Her eyes lit up in excitement. Oh, this is a hand mirror, right? I remember seeing these in Sharon. That's right. There was a lot of fancy glassware in Osra, probably because they traded extensively with the Beggaret continent. Due to their return being short, they picked up a bunch of mirrors and baubles. Oh, it's beautiful. I bet it costs a bundle. Hee hee. Hey, glad you like it. Edis looked very proud at Aisha's overjoyed reaction, but it was Sylphie who actually picked out the mirror. Edis had decent taste herself, but she always went for overly simple stuff, like a sturdy kitchen knife. Wow, I'm really adorable, aren't I? Aisha spun around, examining herself and giving herself compliments. She kept right on going until Lilia showed up and clapped her on the side of the head. Rudius was soothed by seeing his little sister so excited and full of life. It seemed they made a good choice on that present. Good old Aisha. I miss Aisha. I miss Aisha. So never a dull moment with Aisha. Hi, Lilia. Anything happened while we were gone? Is everything all right? Expressionless as ever, Lilia nodded slightly. Yes, we're all safe and sound. That's good to hear. He was fairly sure that things were fine the moment they entered, but it was still a relief to know for certain. Oh wait, Aisha said. Her expression suddenly darkened. There's one thing, Rudius. It's Roxy. Rudius was shocked, wondering what was wrong with Roxy, fearing she lost her baby. But he calmed himself. Lilia would have mentioned that. Maybe she was sick or in the hospital. She got a little... Aisha stopped mid-sentence before turning to the doorway of the living room. Roxy was peeking out from behind it. My Roxy's back. I missed Roxy. My girl's back. I didn't think anything. Right here, I didn't really think anything was happening with Roxy. I agree with Rudius that if something was going wrong, I think Lilia would probably brought it up very quickly. Yes, everything's fine, but I don't think... I just assumed it was that Roxy was going to be, like, overly sensitive about the fact that her belly was big. That was the only thing I could think of, is that she was sensitive about the size of her belly. And yes, possibly chunking up, which is technically a good thing. But yeah, I didn't really think it was going to be that part of the belly. Didn't think it was going to be that specific part of the belly. Hey there, Roxy. We just got back. She didn't look injured or sick. More the picture of health. She replied, not emerging from behind the door. Welcome home, Rudy. I was honestly expecting you to be gone a little longer. Since you're back right on time, I'm guessing things went well? Yep. Princess Ariel managed to come out on top. She hadn't technically taken the throne yet, and there was still a chance they would get word of her assassination in a few months. But it felt so unlikely that Rudius couldn't see much point in dwelling on it. Keep flagging it. Keep flagging it. I see, that's certainly good to hear. For some reason, Roxy still wasn't revealing herself. All he could do was see her face, and he could notice that her cheeks were a little puffier than usual. Did she get a little tubby as well? Is that it? She was pregnant, so it was totally natural to put on a little weight for the baby. Well, it wasn't like he minded her putting on a few pounds in the first place. Edis probably weighed twice as much as she did. Don't talk about Edis's weight. Don't be talking about Edis's weight. It's all muscle. Well, he said there was like some chub there, but yeah, she's all muscle. Aisha spoke up. I'm Rudius. Roxy's feeling a little bit delicate lately. Make sure to be really nice to her, okay? He could understand that. She had to be anxious about her pregnancy, and now she had sudden weight gain on her mind as well. When his wife felt uneasy, it was his job to reassure her. I wouldn't say I'm feeling delicate. Why are you hiding behind the door then? Asked Sylphie. Slowly, reluctantly, Roxy shuffled out from her hiding place. Her belly had gotten noticeably larger in the 2 months that they were away. Maybe he was seeing things, but he thought that her breasts got bigger as well. Normally, he wouldn't even notice them when she was wearing clothing. Today, their presence were fairly obvious. If they were producing, he'd have to get a taste. I knew that was coming. I just knew that was coming. Like, every time it comes out, he's got to constantly bring up, it's not my thing. I'm not... That's a thing that I'm just not on board with. You do you, I guess. That aside, it seemed the Midgard went through pregnancy more or less the same way that humans did, even though they were technically demons. My body doesn't feel like it belongs to me anymore. My belly's all swollen, and I can feel the baby squirming around inside me. Everyone says there's nothing to worry about, but I can't help but worrying. Oh, I know what you mean. I felt exactly the same way when I was pregnant. And of course, Reese always has to run off somewhere when you're feeling anxious. Reese felt a stab of guilt. He felt like he had no choice on the matter. Sniffle. Sorry, Sylphie. Sorry, Roxy. What? Oh no, I'm not really blaming you or anything, Rudy. Sylphie smiled awkwardly, avoiding his teary gaze. Way to rub it in. I know. Why don't the two of you spend the rest of the day together? I bet that will make Roxy feel better. Is that okay with you, Edis? Sir. Edis was glancing at Roxy's belly and her own, probably wondering what it would be like. She's like, I need one soon. I don't know. That could be making her feel anxious, like she's finally seeing it. She's like, I don't know about this anymore. And she's talking about how she doesn't like it, and it makes her not feel like her own body. I don't know anymore. Nah, I gotta stop her. Well, that's settled then. Rudy, go on and spend some time with Roxy. I'll deal with our bags and everything. Where's Lucy at the moment? She's playing with Miss Zenith, up on the second floor. Thanks, Thelia. Come on, Edis, you help too. Sure. After they left, Reese went into the living room with Roxy. There he found the sacred beast curled up at the fireplace. He let out a deep woof at the sight of him and trotted over, wagging his tail. Reese patted his head and got a lick in return. What a good boy. I forgot about the sacred beast. It's been so long, I forgot about the sacred beast. Settling down on the sofa with Roxy, she was wearing loose clothing and seemed to be curling up to hide the shape of her body. Maybe she was self-conscious about her figure. He honestly thought that she looked pretty cute this way. Roxy? How are things in Austria anyways? Since you're back right on schedule, I'm guessing things went smoothly. Didn't you just ask me that 5 minutes ago? She seemed flustered. You didn't see that every day. He wasn't sure what got her so agitated, but it was kind of adorable. Hopefully she wasn't going to be this cute all day. Edison Sylphie had kept him busy in the capital, but he had some steam to let loose. It was probably best not to push things in a sexual direction. If Roxy was feeling self-conscious, he was trying to be the considerate husband here. First, something nice and gentle. Your belly's gotten pretty big. Can I stroke it? No, absolutely not. Shut down instantly. Guess she was a little sensitive about her belly in particular. Don't touch my breast either. He didn't even get to ask. She knew where you were going. She knew where you were going next. He wondered if she thought he was obsessed with breasts or something. Well, she wasn't wrong, but still. They've been leaking this weird yellow liquid lately. I see. Sylvie had the same thing happen. Her body was probably getting ready to produce. He would be delighted to give her some helpful massages, but it seemed like a no-go. Can I stroke your head at least? She leaned towards him. Chest and belly were off limits. He continued the trial and error to find out where she drew the line. How about your butt? Well, I guess that's all right. She blushed before he ran his hand along her bottom. It was nice and round today. Yeah, no, he was supposed to be doing the considerate thing. Forget the butt. Think about the baby. Reese never changes. When I'm around the house, I think I'd like to try to spend as much time with you as I can. Really? You don't have to force yourself. Aisha's just here to help me. And I know you have a lot of things on your plate. Yeah, but I know it's tough being pregnant. Maybe I can help you up and down the stairs or help you in the bath. Anything you want. The bath? Her alarmed words confused him. Why was the bath a danger zone? That's right, you do like to wash my body, don't you? He did love it, especially using his own hands instead of a washcloth. He sometimes loses control about halfway through, though. He can't help it. He just can't help it. Be considerate. Be considerate. Rudy, you're going to find out eventually. So, I should get it over with. Okay. Defeat in her voice. Roxy faced him. Expression deadly serious. Was there actually something wrong? Maybe she found the baby was sick. Maybe she heard it yelling, "Call me the great emperor of the demon world," from inside of her belly. That didn't make sense. Lilia would have told me if there was something that serious. Again, yeah, I think that's the kind of the fallback is, well, no, Lilia said everything's good. But again, there could be something that Roxy's not telling Lilia. Question mark? Lifting her dress, she revealed her baby bump, now a full-fledged bulge. Her belly button was protruding slightly from its surface. His first thought was cute. Second was adorable. Nothing else came to mind. He wasn't seeing any weird patterns on her skin or anything. Not even stretch marks. Damn. I guess it is Japanese literature. Can't have stretch marks. What's the problem here? Isn't it obvious? My belly button's sticking out right now, right? He didn't know what that had to do with anything. It's supposed to be a common thing. Yeah? It's ridiculous, isn't it? She seemed to have strong feelings on the matter. He was beginning to understand what Aisha meant by delicate. It may seem trivial to anyone, but for Roxy, it was currently a major problem. You caused it. You caused it, technically. No, it's adorable. I heard that pause. You can't fool me that easy. I'm not trying to fool you, Roxy. I like it fine the way it is. Liar. I remember the first time you licked it. You said, "Bleh, your belly button is the best." You didn't. Don't try to deny it. Bleh, your belly button's the best. Surely he never said anything that creepy. Well, sometimes he got carried away in bed. He probably did say it. Yeah, definitely did. What a creep. Ever since that, I made sure my belly button was nice and clean. You must be disappointed to see it ruined like this, right? It's not ruined, Roxy. He responded immediately this time. It wasn't like he had any fetish. As long as it was part of Roxy, he'd lavish it with love no matter what. Then he suddenly remembered licking her belly button one baby-making session. After she got embarrassed, he barraged her with compliments about it. I'm not falling for this. You're all talk, Rudy. You want to convince me? Then prove that you're being honest. How am I supposed to prove that? All he could think about was formally establishing the Church of Roxy and delivering a sermon on the matter to hundreds of true believers. That would take a few days to arrange and wouldn't resolve his current dilemma. Lick it. You don't mind? He's like, yes, ma'am. Allow me. This was a daring suggestion. Was that all she wanted? It felt like more of a reward than a test. Whatever. No need to overthink things. All right, everyone. Hands together. Let's say grace. Thank you, O Lord, for our food. He licked her belly button. In that moment, something moved inside her belly. It was small movements, almost like a muscle twitching, but he could clearly feel things through his tongue. Roxy must have noticed it as she froze up and met his gaze. The baby just moved. I guess someone's saying, "Welcome home, Daddy." Rising to his feet, he ran his hand on her stomach. She objected earlier, but this time, she didn't mind. Her belly was nice and warm. Roxy's embarrassment seemed to have melted away all of a sudden. With a tender smile, she reached up and placed her hand atop his. Thank you, Rudy. I guess Sylphie was right. I do feel a little better now. Hearing that was relieving to Rudius. Sorry to repeat myself, but welcome home, Rudy. Glad to be back. He was home again, and all was well. The goddess is back in the story. All is well. I do miss Roxy a lot. It feels like this story just does not want to have time with Roxy at all. She's just such a side character, unfortunately. The next day, he went out to let his friends know they were back. Nanahoshi was at the floating fortress when they went by, so this meant Zenoba, Cliff, and Eloise. He didn't have any acquaintances left in the city of Shiraya anymore. Everyone was going their own separate ways. Even Zenoba and Cliff would probably one day leave. With that thought, he headed to his final stop of the day. That is an interesting thing to point out. I mean, this almost feels like Refugien right here is sort of drawing that parallels to adulthood. Any idea that when you reach a certain age and you and your friends are all getting married or they're moving off to businesses or whatever, they maybe get a job and that job requires them to be in a different state. And just the general sense of people becoming adults in general is this moment where suddenly all of your acquaintances and your friends, they go their separate ways. Marriages happen, they get families, children, jobs again, they go their separate ways. And I think it's almost trying to draw that parallel here is that, yes, technically Rudius has reached that age where suddenly everybody goes their own way. People have graduated college and they're going off their own places. You have, yes, Lenny and Priscilla, they're going off and leaving. Again, Ariel's going off and leaving. It's that separation. And he's kind of getting that sense right here. Suddenly, it almost feels like he's having a reset in his life and his acquaintances. Everybody's moving away. He mentions the idea of Zenoba will probably go off somewhere. Cliff will probably go, but yeah, I assume that Cliff is going to eventually one day go back down to the Millis. That's a given. That's like literally, I assume one of those volumes up there, maybe two, is literally Cliff and the church. I don't know if Rudy's going to help him. I assume Rudy's going to help him. Cliff going off the church. At some point, it's going to happen. It's a given. Zenoba, which I do question because there's a side of me that I think they kind of insinuated the idea that Cliff would try to help with Ellen Lace being accepted down there. But yeah, there is that question mark. Would Cliff go down because would he want to focus on just being with Ellen Lace and his children rather than going down there where they're not going to like that idea that he's married with Ellen Lace. Anyway, that aside, Zenoba I don't see. I think Zenoba is just going to go wherever Rudius goes. Whatever Rudius says, Zenoba says, okay. I think he's going to follow Rudius everywhere. But who knows? Maybe Zenoba gets married at some point and just completely forget. I won't put it past him. That would be a very interesting change in Zenoba's character, him finding some sort of independence and actually accepting, again, having children and everything. The world had taken on an orange tint by the time he reached the graveyard. It was a quiet place, lined with rows of rounded headstones. Most people wouldn't choose to come here in the twilight, but things worked out that way. The grave he was here to see had Paul Greyrat carved on its surface, and it still looked brand new. I think this is going to become like a commonality here. Like every time some big thing concludes, he goes and talks to Paul, gives him the update. It's a very Japanese thing with the altars and stuff like that. He brought his hands together for a moment. Hey, Dad, nobody died this time either. He placed a bottle of booze from Ars on top, along with some flowers from the neighborhood. He started things with a summary of the most recent happenings in their life. He told Paul about Orsted, the man god, the battles that they fought in Osra. I got to meet your little brother for the first time. My uncle, I guess. He seemed like a pretty faint-hearted guy, but he did remind me of you. Picturing Palmon's face as he spoke those words, there was definitely some resemblance. They were totally different in terms of build and personalities, but you could tell that he was Paul's brother. There was something similar about the set of their eyes, maybe. He survived too. Your nephew risked his life to protect him. It made me feel a little envious. That sucks. Luke acted to save his father, who would otherwise be executed. Or that was what it seemed like to Rudius. He wasn't there for the entire conversation. Palmon wasn't an admirable person, and they intended originally to kill him. But seeing Luke's sheer desperation made him want to help out. He ended up stepping in to offer some support. So he didn't speak up in that room just to update Ariel on what they found. He literally was like, I gotta get in on here. I gotta explain the situation, and literally gave Ariel a possibility of an out. And again, that kind of plays into what Edis does later on, is reading the room, is reading that Rudius probably came to that same conclusion. We got to stop the situation. Read the room. Put an end to this. Luke's desperate here. We gotta find some resolve here. I had to murder some way this time. I didn't deal the fatal blow personally, but I tracked him down and attacked him with every intention of killing him, and he died. I don't regret that, but it did leave a bad taste in my mouth. It wasn't like this was the first time he'd killed someone. Similar things happened before, but this one really struck him, probably because he'd heard Rada's story a few minutes earlier. Again, I'm still question mark about that. I mean, I've seen a couple people in the chat Seen a couple people in the chat trying to give their reasoning. And there's a funny thing that I've found with doing Mushoku Mondays is most people know to keep their mouth shut about what I'm speculating on. But every now and then, whenever I see a lot of people that normally keep their mouth shut about what I'm speculating on start to speculate on things, it makes me go, okay, maybe it's not so much I'm missing something, but maybe it's just vague. It's seemingly left vague. And it seems like this is being left vague. Maybe something else comes out later, but for this situation, it seems like it's vague. Now, right here, again, he's connecting it to the story about Reda. The fact that this guy that I killed, moments earlier, I just found out he saved this old lady's life, and she felt it necessary to come in here and give up her life to protect him. Maybe that's why I'm feeling bad. Because again, I've heard some people say, well, it's because he chased him down. He does mention it here, because I chased him down. He didn't say that's why I'm feeling that way, but he is noting that I chased him down. He chased down Outie. That's nothing new. He didn't deal the fatal blow to Outie, but he chased Outie down, and Outie was killed by Orsted, his ally. And with this situation, with Darius, I chased him down, and somebody else dealt the killing blow. This isn't something new. And yes, he's even mentioned several times before, I probably killed those guys in Begaret when I raised up those walls. Who knows? Why this is making me feel this way? And I thought it was a social thing, because society will know that he killed Darius. Now, it could be that Ariel releases the information saying, no, I had him killed. I will not release who did it or whatever. Like, if they ask, it was one of my knights. I don't know. I don't know who exactly did it. But I had him killed. It's on my hands. What do you want? But yeah, again, here's kind of, again, for the second time, he's bringing up Reda's story. So it seems like that's the direction that this is going, is that it's simply because he knew more about Darius than he did before, and he somehow sympathized with it and felt bad about hunting him down, despite the fact that what it's sort of connecting here is, okay, I was in that room with Reda. Darius flees. Reda had him flee. And then Reda tells me, I'm doing this to protect him, and she loses her life trying to help him flee. I heard that story, but yet I still, in her death, her dying breath trying to stop this, I still followed through with it, hunted him down and killed him. Maybe that's why. Who knows? Ryuz took a few moments to reflect on things that had taken place in Asra. On the whole, the mission went well. They hadn't lost anyone they didn't want to lose, and achieved their objective. Still, it had been a very close call. One small mistake, and they would have lost somebody. They probably would have won the battle anyways, but at a terrible cost. Yet, they succeeded completely. There was no denying that, but he felt like there was plenty of lessons to be learned. What if they defeated Aber at the Red Worm's Whiskers? What if Outie had successfully escaped their battle? What if Orsted hadn't come running when Reda caught them? What if Aber hadn't carried an antidote for the poison? You could drive yourself crazy asking questions like that, of course. Maybe it wasn't productive to dwell on all the details. There was one thing he knew for sure, though. The enemy was still alive and well. They beat the man god once, but the battle for Asra was one of many to come. The conflict would last for years, decades. How long could he keep squeaking by like this before something went horribly wrong? He got lucky this time, but he hadn't always been so fortunate. He felt like his mistakes had cost him dearly in the past. Even if he didn't think of it that way this time, Paul's death was a good example. Back then, he convinced himself that things just worked out badly. To be sure, he gave that fight everything he had. He made some mistakes and questionable decisions, but he still did his very best. That allowed him to believe that Paul's death was unavoidable. He told himself it was just bad luck. A quirk of fate. Was that actually true, though? Could a bit of good luck have saved his father's life? Sure, he died at the very last moment to the Hydra's final attack. The smallest of fortunate coincidences could have prevented that, or even an unfortunate coincidence, like someone getting injured earlier and forcing them to back out. Maybe if they found just one more person for their party. Well, there was no point in speculating about that. The point was, luck could always turn on almost anything. Did he have to keep tossing the dice like this? Flipping a coin and hoping for the best? With lives of everyone he loved on the line, many of them came close to death in Asra. Edis in particular was badly wounded and then poisoned. They come right out to the very edge of disaster and barely survived. Next time, maybe they come out right on the edge of victory and die. Was he willing to leave it in the hands of fate? Sure, there was always an element of luck in life. Human beings had their limits and weaknesses. It's impossible to control events completely. But when he looked back at his time in Asra, he saw room for improvement. What if he had a few more skills, a bit more combat prowess, a few local connections? Maybe he wouldn't have come close to losing someone. Maybe there was ways he could make things easier for them. He had to try to figure out what he was lacking, get stronger, hone his skills, get allies. Thank you. Thank you. Finally, thank you. It's time to get stronger. And yes, I do agree. I think we had this discussion way back there, the last Tombstone, really. Like, it feels like these little segments, again, I think is going to be probably regular. Every time some big event comes, he's probably going to go back to here. Even if he ends up moving, let's say he moves to Millis for the whole situation with Cliff or something like that, or maybe he goes somewhere in the Demon Continent. Maybe he hangs out and maybe he lives in the Demon Continent for a little bit with the in-laws, wherever he goes. And I think every time he does something big, he's probably going to still like teleport back to here to come see Paul, give Paul updates. Again, it's a very Japanese thing. And I know that places elsewhere do this as well. Like me personally, it's not something we really do. Once the person passes, it's kind of a different thing there. But he's giving him updates. And it's almost like it's a therapy session. Like he sits down in the chair, and then Paul's spirit appears and goes, "All right, kid, what do you got? What's next? What's going on, kid? What'd you do?" Like give him an update on everything, and he's just kind of just speaking his mind. One of the biggest the conversation that has come up these 2 times. I'm not saying this is like a regular thing that's going to happen, but for both we're 1 for 1 at this point of Rudeus kind of reflecting on his combat and what he could have done differently. And yes, I think even within it came down to, I need to get stronger. I need to do something to get stronger. And I think that kind of plays out here, is that he's realizing I got to do something because I can't keep relying on something else. I do like that he's expanding it a lot. It's much more broader than I was giving it credit for initially, is that it's not just getting power, getting new spells. It's also like connections and stuff like that. Because yes, connections is a big thing. The whole joke came when they were leaving this area and going down to Asura. One of the jokes he made was that he was meeting all these people, and he's never going to remember their names. Make connections. You need to make connections. Now, the downside of that is that sometimes when you make a connection with one group, you make enemies of another group. So I do acknowledge that. But there still is an element there. Like, even right now, I don't know how public they're going to be about Rudeus helping them out. I mean, they had a whole send-off, and so they could have possibly noted then. Like, it wasn't Ariel leaving. They had a big send-off in the town. People were seeing them leave. These are the heroes that helped Ariel. So, yeah, they met a lot of people in that point. And again, there's going to be possibly other locations like Millis or something like that. I mean, Millis does have a presence in there, so I guess that's not a big thing. But anybody that is going to be against them, technically Rada made a passing comment about, somebody down there in the Dragon King realm wanted something to happen. Could possibly be a thing there. If there's some sort of war that could come between the two of them, that could be a negative as well. Who knows? But yeah, it's interesting to kind of note. But again, it's good that he is finally reflecting, I need to get stronger. It's an aspect of I keep scraping by. I can't keep scraping by. I can't keep going, that was good enough. Or, man, that was so close. And again, acknowledging this isn't going to go away. I think the thing that he had going for him before when he thought about this was that, well, hopefully nothing bad happens again. He wasn't expecting that he'd be going on this 100-year battle alongside Orested's side. Right now, he knows, I'm going to be constantly having to fight. That's what he was saying up at the floating fortress. This is one of many battles. There's no telling when Orested is going to contact me again and go, here, kill them now. This is an ongoing thing. I'm going to be caught in a ton of battles. So this isn't the end. We've established at that point, this isn't a one-off. It wasn't just to go help Ariel and then go back to our peaceful life and live the rest of my life just chilling. No. Battle after battle after battle after battle. It's no longer a thing of I can't waste all my time training because I may never use it. Because I think that was an argument that was sort of in my mind, or at least somebody said back when the last time it happened. This idea of you can't just sit here and spend all your life, like with the disease thing. You can't just spend your entire life learning detoxification for something that never happens. No, we're establishing now that it's probably going to happen because he's going to be caught in battles over and over again. So it is something that he does have to focus on. Then again, I feel like I was already working on all of that. Regrets were just a part of life. There wasn't enough time in the day to do everything perfectly. Nothing was ever guaranteed, no matter what. His future self had been monstrously powerful, and his life was miserable. Sometimes knowing a lot of fancy spells wasn't good enough. And he's doing good. He's like, I need to get better. I need to learn people. I need to meet people. I need to get stronger because there's something coming up. And then he falls back again. But then again, knowing all that stuff did nothing for my future self, so I guess no. Stop. Stop, Rudius. I don't think he's making a proper connection here. What Rudius is saying is that, okay, maybe I don't need all these powers, which I agree as well. It's not like him getting monstrously powerful is going to fix everything. I fully accept that. I acknowledge that. But that's not a good way of seeing things. Hey, I need to get stronger. I need to meet people. I need to get all these powerful abilities, and so I can face off against the next thing, so that thus nobody dies. I need to get better. But wait, my future self was monstrously powerful, and his life was miserable. So knowing lots of spells isn't good enough. Wrong. Stop there. That's a bad example. Future Rudius got himself extremely powerful after he fell. He had nothing to protect anymore. Well, he did have, Julie and Zenoba, but the point in which future Rudius got extremely powerful was after he lost those that he wanted to protect. Rudius right now, you're at the state before you have lost it, and thus you can still protect it. Power can prevent sadness sometimes, but it can never undo it. That's the key thing you need to learn from future Rudius. Future Rudius couldn't undo his sadness, because he had already lost everything. But you, as the previous Rudius, can get stronger to protect that sadness from ever being a thing. Now, again, I don't like the idea of ever thinking that your power can grant you perfect protection. There's always going to be something you cannot prevent. There's always going to be a time where you're somewhere else and something happens over here. He's already established that with the Sacred Beast. The whole idea was to have somebody here to protect his family while he was off in Asura. He needed something that he needed to know that he wasn't going to lose somebody when he wasn't there. So there's still that fear there that I'm not going to be always present with all of them. Roxy's going to be at the university. Sylphie's going to be at home. I'm going to be over here in the Demon Continent with Orsted. Edis may be with me or whatever. Maybe she's got to handle something else for Orsted at the same time. That would be interesting too. He has sent them both on different goals, and that she has to kind of accept to help out while accepting to help Orsted out. I'm always going to be somewhere else, and I can't be there at the university if something happens there. I can't be there at my house all the time to make sure that nothing happens there. There's always going to be a case where you're not going to be able to protect people. But at least when you're there, like with Edis and her getting poisoned, at least when you're there, you have the tools to undo and protect her. That's the important thing. Because I think there's much more regret in being there and unable to stop something than not being there and something happens. I think they're both equally going to be tragic, but it's a different feeling, I think. Still, he couldn't let himself be complacent just because things went well this time. In his next battles against the Man God, he wanted to win cleanly instead of barely squeaking by. He wanted to be powerful enough to keep his family alive. He wanted to keep them safe as he possibly could, not get careless. This was a promise he made before, but one he meant to keep. If he ever started to forget that, he could always come back here for a reminder. I'm going to do the best I can, Dad. Keep an eye on me, okay? With those words, he turned and left the cemetery. Ugh, the dad chapters. The dad with the cemetery chapters are always tough. Well, at least this one, it wasn't too much of him talking directly at him. It's a lot of him kind of just thinking about the situation instead, so it's a lot different. It didn't hurt me as much. It could have. It could have. All right, the final chapter of Volume 17. Extra chapter, question mark, question mark, question mark. Or extra chapter, One night at a place whose name didn't matter, a local bartender witnessed something strange. Specifically, he saw a man, a solitary drunkard. This man had probably been bar hopping for a while now because he came in here, he was completely drunk. Still, he kept drinking, totally plastered. An alcoholic was nothing new here. However, something odd happened late that night. There was a few customers left at this point. The bartender had been washing up and thinking of closing up shop for the evening. All of a sudden, that drunkard lifted his head as if he noticed something. His eyes were totally unfocused, and he looked half asleep. But for some reason, he turned and faced the seat beside him. There was no one sitting in that chair. I'm gonna do I have my theories on who this is gonna be, but I'm gonna completely do a neutral voice. I'm gonna do a completely neutral voice here because I don't know who it is. That's the only problem with doing these reads and doing voices, is I don't know exactly who it is. I have my suspicions. We'll get into it. Hey there, man. It's been a while. The drunkard croaked out a greeting and tried to slap an invisible friend on the shoulder. His hand went smoothly through the air, but he didn't even seem to notice. He just kept right on talking. Ah, what's the matter, Chief? You're looking pretty gloomy today. Go on, tell me all about it. Deciding that he was just blathering like an idiot, the bartender shook his head and turned back to clean up. What the? Hey, barkeep! The bartender glanced up again. The drunkard's bleary, unfocused gaze was wandering around the bar. How about getting this guy a beer too, huh? While unsure who this guy was supposed to be, the bartender wasn't going to refuse an order. He was just going to reply when, the hell? Guess he wandered off somewhere. What kind of customer service is that, huh? The drunkard just decided that he was nowhere to be found and began to loudly badmouth him to his non-existent buddy. The bartender heaved a heavy sigh. He dealt with rambling drunks like this on a regular, but the ones who talked total nonsense could get violent sometimes. The man didn't look like much of a fighter, but the last thing he wanted at the end of a long night was to spend an hour mopping up blood and teeth off the floor. Rather than flailing around at random, however, the man went back to speaking to an empty chair. As he listened, the bartender began to feel a bit unnerved. For a rambling monologue of the drunk, this sounded a lot like half of an actual conversation. Oh yeah? So what? Someone wants you dead? Ha! Yeah, I bet you make yourself plenty of enemies. Hell, I'd probably hate your guts myself if I was seeing things from a different point of view. Good thing I'm such an easygoing guy, right? What? You're asking me for a favor? Now, that's downright unusual. Uh-huh. Look, the last time I did you a solid, things went real bad for me. You do remember what happened in my hometown, right? You're sorry? Man, that sounds weird coming from you. Must be a cold one in hell tonight. Oh? It really is that bad? Bad enough you need my help? Well, sure. You saved my bacon plenty of times. I did appreciate that heads up in Labyrinth earlier. For the record. Yeah, didn't work out great in the end. But that's on us. We just weren't cut for the job, I guess. Oh, brother, here we go. I try to be nice, and you think I'm showing you my belly. Fine. If there's something I can do, I guess I can hear you out. Oh? Ho ho ho. Knowing you, that ain't a surprise in the slightest. So who's the guy you're after? Whoa! That's a scary name. Come on, man. Are you pulling my leg or what? Huh? What? How is he nothing special? Damn. Small fry, huh? Listen to you. So what's the problem then? Ah. So that's how it is. Him too, huh? Yeah. That explains a lot, actually. Am I gonna help you or not? Well, I don't know. I kinda like the kid, honestly. Whoa, somebody's awfully cranky all of a sudden. Damn, you're desperate, aren't you? I thought I was a worthless piece of trash. You want my help that bad? Fine, I'll help you out, man. So? What's the plan? I haven't seen him in a while, but he's damn good at what he does. Ah, let's hear it. A team? So you're gonna gather up a bunch of guys like me? Okay, right. Then what? Yeah, I think I get the idea. Don't know if it'll work out or not, but hey, guess we'll give it a shot. At this point, the man collapsed forward on his table and started to sleep like a log. Bartender, who heard every word of the conversation, found himself thinking unsettling thoughts. Had this man just made a deal with the devil? Was there some sort of profoundly evil thing sitting in the chair that he couldn't see? And was this thing gonna creep up behind the bartender and whisper, "You should have minded your own business"? I couldn't help to do that one, I'm sorry. Ridiculous, he thought, with a firm shake of his head. The bartender approached the sleeping drunkard and gently shook his shoulder. Hey, buddy, we're about to close up for the night. Mind heading somewhere else to get your beauty sleep? After a few more vigorous shakes, the drunkard pushed himself off the table, mumbling. All his manic energy seemed to have disappeared completely. Rising unsteadily to his feet, he dropped his coin on the table and then exited with a zigzagging walk. It looked like a puppet to the bartender. As he turned away to head towards the kitchen, he stopped and heard the drunkard mutter to himself. The man's voice was soft, but somehow the bartender heard him very clearly. Man, this sucks, but I owe him a lot, and that kid owes me. So if I have to pick sides, I guess this is how it's gonna be. It wasn't the voice of a demon, but it was a much colder voice than you expect from a drunk. A shiver made its way down the bartender's spine. When he turned back towards the exit, however, the only sign that anyone had been there was a faintly tinkling bell on the inside of his door. And that is volume 17. Thank you guys so much for dropping by for this Mushoku Monday. That was a good Mushoku Monday. Definitely a lot of fun. Thanks, chat, that dropped by for the premiere. Thanks to everybody. I'm joking. I'm going to get into this. It's Geese. It's got to be Geese. The only person I can think of is Geese. Okay. Why my theory is Geese is he says boss when he talk. It's obviously the man god. Whoever's in this room, in this bar, is talking to the man god. Now, it is odd to see it's somebody talking out loud in person to the man god. It's signifying that this person's drunk, sitting there physically in a chair, and he's talking at somebody sitting in the chair next to him, as if they're in the room with them. But it is indicating that he's at least in the barren world, because as he looks around for the bartender, he can't see the bartender. So it's like he's visually seeing in the barren world or whatever, in the presence of the man god. So it's kind of like this whole thing where like he's physically still moving despite everything else being over there. By all indications so far, we've been giving the idea that it's always in people's dreams. As if a person goes to sleep and then like their mind gets summoned to that world, or at least their vision and their presence is being pulled in there. I was always speculating this idea of Rudius himself was his soul was being pulled there, or my other theory, the idea that he's always technically there. His past self is always technically there. It's just he's remotely controlling this. So this is kind of implying that at least because this person, maybe because they're drunk, they're still speaking out loud. And it could indicate that when Rudius is with the man god, he could have been possibly speaking out loud, just nobody was there to hear. He has times where he was sleeping with, Sylphie or whatever, and he's with the man god, and no indication's shown that she was hearing him say anything. But that's kind of interesting. I think every time that he's pretty much visited the man god, most of the time, he is technically with somebody. Like even way back then, he was, laying there in front of Rejerd the first time, and Rejerd could have heard something. But that's interesting. But that aside, yeah, it's obviously assuming here that he's talking to the man god. And even the way the conversation goes, it even indicates this idea that at the end of the conversation, it has that moment where the man god gives his advice. Like every time that Rudius talks to the man god, he always has this moment at the very end. Okay, do this, and then or you'll regret it or whatever. And then he kicks Rudius out, and Rudius goes, wait, what the hell? Give me more information. It kind of is the same thing here. He's like, okay, then what? Yeah, I think they get the idea. We'll do this. And he kind of points it out like he's saying something to the effect of, okay, what is it? Let's hear it. A team? So basically indicating that man god says, okay, let's hear it. I want you to get together with this other team. They're going to be a bunch of guys like you, whatever. And they're going to go after these individuals. So it obviously here is indicating that he's making a band of people to attack Rudius. Or somebody else. I'm presuming here it's Rudius. And why I say that? Okay, let's get into this. Why I think it's Geese is because, again, there's several indications here. He is a drunkard. Geese loves drinking. I know, that's not much, right? But, again, he refers to the man god as boss. Geese likes calling people boss. That seems to be his verbal tick, is calling people boss. So when he's talking to the man god, he's like, what's up, boss? Additionally, bringing up the labyrinth. When he speaks about the fact that things went bad at the labyrinth, which I would assume is going to be the labyrinth, the teleportation labyrinth. He had to go there, and by indicating that it went bad was because, yes, Paul died. But he also indicates that, yeah, we weren't ready for it. We weren't cut out for the job. He says specifically, I do appreciate the heads up in the labyrinth earlier, for the record. Yeah, didn't work out as great in the end, but that's on us. We just weren't cut for the job, I guess. This right here finally puts an end to the theory I had way back there when they went to the teleportation labyrinth. For those that don't remember or weren't here for that Mushoku Monday, I was stuck on, why does Geese know where Zenith is? Who told him that? Because at the time, when Rudius first got there, they said Geese found out from this other party had gone into the teleportation labyrinth, seen Zenith, and they then left. We got no indication of who this party was. But again, the thing that I got stuck on was that Zenith was in a crystal in the boss's room, under this hidden door that Rudius had to blow up. When they finally got down there to that final room before the boss, they were there with Geese, and Geese looked around for a switch to find a path to another door to where the actual teleport. These other ones were fake. There's going to be another one. And they were looking for a way to get down here, down underneath this area where it was hollow, and they had to blast their way through. So yes, unless this other party found out there was a switch somewhere that Geese couldn't find, nobody went down there. Nobody has been at this Hydra, or at least as it currently is laid out. It could have moved, it could have shifted around. And again, I mentioned at the time, Zenith could have been somewhere else in the dungeon, but then carried down to where the Hydra was, or maybe sucked down there through the power of the labyrinth itself. Because the labyrinth itself is indicating that the labyrinth shifted over time, connected with this teleportation ruins, and became the teleportation labyrinth. So it can change. But again, I was always stuck on who told Geese this. And I think at some point, I finally came to the conclusion it was probably the man god. That Geese was being talked to by the man god. Was told information about where Zenith was by the man god. And here, if this is Geese, confirms it. For the record, thanks for the heads up about the labyrinth. You told me what I need to know. You told me where to find Zenith. We were looking everywhere. There's all these labyrinths. You told me where to go. Why did Geese zip to Begarit? He probably knew way back here, and he went to there to confirm it probably. Or maybe the man god told him, don't bring anybody with you, go to Begarit, that's where she's at. And eventually knowing that Paul would probably go with him at some point. So yeah, that's the big tip away, is that. And then finally, the last tip that I have that this is Geese, and it's more of a tip away from my other theory. He didn't look like much of a fighter. Geese has never looked like much of a fighter. He's a thief. He's a swindler, a gambler. He's knowledgeable. Everything about Geese has always been in knowledge and knowing connections, not being that he's a fighter. He uses knowledge to fight things and to basically protect himself. And yeah, it's always kind of indicated this idea that Geese has always been like this mystery to me. And I always kind of had a feeling eventually something like this would come up. And at some point I lost a lot of trust for him as a character, really. That's the main thing. But yeah, my only other theory, if it's not Geese, my only other theory is Soldat. I don't want it to be Soldat. I don't think it's Soldat because, again, Soldat's a fighter. They ain't going to be a bartender that sees Soldat and goes, yeah, he didn't look like much of a fighter. Soldat doesn't have a boss tick. Soldat does go to labyrinths. And yes, the other indicator here for Geese and Soldat is the fact that he mentions, I owe that kid a lot. Soldat and Geese owe Rudius a lot. Now, yes, Geese, that was the only thing that was kind of tipping me away from Geese, is that, I mean, yes, technically Rudius helped them a lot with bringing that book and helping them through the labyrinth. So I can see him owing Rudius there, that he helped them with that whole situation. But not really much outside of that. I mean, the whole situation with the Beast Folk place, he went there to help Rudius. And again, it's another indication that Geese probably was told to go there. Go to the Beast Folks, the Doldia. You get yourself captured, or you'll regret it. And he went there to meet Rudius. So he was pointed that direction by the man god. And I think that's probably what has been pushing Geese this entire time. I bet the man god has been guiding Geese in his entire journey to help find people and to help Paul and to find Zenith. It's probably been all Geese, all the man god pushing Geese. But yeah, my only other theory was Soldat, and again, there's too many factors in here that pushes me away from that, and I fall back to Geese. So yeah, it pretty much the big giveaway is going to be if Geese suddenly shows up again, a band of dudes behind him. It sucks. It really does suck that he's even willing to kind of feed into this. That's what really bugs me. And not that I have any sort of respect, not that I feel like I trust Geese at all. I can see him being very much so self-driven. They've already kind of indicated that a lot. That this is a guy that just goes off and wastes all their money and stuff. But he always seemed like a good guy. And the sad thing is, I think my mindset went to that he's a good guy because he was always being pushed by the man god to help out Rudius. Not that he's a good guy that he wanted to help out Rudius. Not that he did all this stuff for Paul and them because he wanted to. It could be partially driven by that. Again, it could be a factor that the man god's just kind of going, here, you're doing this already, let me help you out with it. And that's why he said he's given him a solid. He's noted that the man god has kind of called him a useless piece of junk, useless piece of trash. But it seems like that was all like over time to eventually one day go, okay, now I need you. Now I need you to do what I need you to do. I've helped you out a lot. Just like with Rudius, I've helped you out a lot. Now kill Orsted for me. I've done so much for you. Now kill Orsted. Just like this situation. So the second person he's pointing out as getting rid of is Rudius. I kind of like the kid. I can see that being Rudius. I owe him a lot, whatever. All that kind of stuff is played in there. And then again, towards the later part. So what I'm saying is there's two people here he's pointing out. The second one, Geese is, if this is Geese, again, he's pointing out that he knows who he is. So that's got to be Rudius. And then later on, he's pointing out that, yes, this kid owes me. Again, I helped Rudius get his mother. He owes me. And again, it's sort of implying there that he wants me to take him out. He wants me to take out Rudius. Repay the favor. You owe me. Time to die. I owe this man god a lot as well. So the question is who the first person is. Who's the first person? That is the question mark. One, they have a scary name, or that's a scary name. It could be a title. It could be Orsted the Dragon God. Maybe he said Orsted the Man God. Now, it doesn't imply earlier that he is fighting somebody, and that's probably where the Man God's telling him, yeah, I'm fighting this Orsted guy. And he's like, oh, yeah, this guy hates you, right? Yeah, I can see that. I'm just an easygoing guy, so I guess you know, that I normally I wouldn't see that kind of stuff. But it could be he's saying, go take out Orsted, the dragon god. And he's like, whoa, scary name. Are you pulling my leg or what? He says, how is he nothing special? And again, that makes sense to it being Orsted, the dragon god, because that can mean that he will immediately go, wait, no, how is that nothing special? You just said Orsted, the dragon god. How can that be nothing special? But then small fry? Huh. Listen to you. Like, okay, maybe he's downplaying his power. That could be as well. And then goes on to say, him too? Yeah, that explains a lot, actually. Like, it explains that he has been he's connecting it because he brings up Rudius, and he's like, okay, that makes sense now because I can totally see Rudius knowing Orsted the Dragon God, or that the Dragon God has helped Rudius in the past, so that makes sense. Because Rudius had a lot of information that I didn't think he would have. That explains it, though. That explains how he got down there so fast. That explains how he got to Begaret so fast and helped us. Oh, he was being helped by this Dragon God. So I think that's the two people they're pointing out is Orsted the Dragon God and Rudius. Man God is getting Geese and a lot of very skilled people to come after that. Now, the question mark is, why Geese? Why would the Man God need Geese? I guess because he thinks that Geese can throw off Rudius, or using Geese's knowledge. He knows that Geese is crafty, and he'll figure something out. He's smart. Geese has always been super smart and super clever, and that could easily go well with a group of very skilled fighters. So I think that's, again, he's creating a group of people. Now, to be clear, it technically doesn't specifically say that he's wanting Geese to kill Rudius. It just sort of implies this idea of, okay, somebody's after me. Orsted, oh, that's a scary name. They're coming after you. Oh, that guy too? Again, Rudius being Rudius, basically. Okay, you're going to get a band together, whatever. Well, okay, that kid owes me a lot. So it could be more implying the idea of like him going, okay, Rudius apparently is working for this guy that's after this man god that's helped me out a lot. And we're putting a group together. And okay, this kid owes me a lot. So if I have to pick sides, I guess this is how it's going to be. I guess it technically does imply the idea that he could be working with a group to do something that will have Orsted and Rudius involved. And it could be, from Geese's perspective here, simply stopping Rudius and Orsted, not necessarily having to kill him. But he is implying the idea that this is a fight between this guy that I know over here that's done me a solid, and Rudius and this Orsted guy over here who owes me. And if I have to pick sides, I guess I'll have to pick his side to kind of help him out more, but not necessarily in a mindset that I have to kill Rudius. But it could be. It could be that he is cold enough to say, you know, look, that's just how, them's the breaks, Rudius. Sorry, I got to pick a side. I guess you're going to die. Again, I don't know. It is one of those kind of struggles I've always had about the mystery of Geese and how good he actually is. How much of a bro he is. He seems like he does a lot of cool things to help us out. But again, how much of that is influenced by the Man God? How much of it is him actually being a cool guy? It's going to suck either way. It's going to suck. Now, one other thing that this whole thing brings up before I forget is that I think I'm two-sided on this. Because yes, for a while now I've been pushing that the next turning point chapter, again, assuming the turning points are the Man God's turning points, not Rudius's, the next turning point chapter had to be the death of Ariel. Because we haven't seen that chapter title yet, and my assumption was up to this point that the way Orsted kind of pointed out that he gets 3 disciples each turning point. And then when the next turning point comes up, he gets another disciple. He reassigns his 3 disciples. Now, yes, Orsted could not know that he can switch disciples or whatever. But if that's the case, if he's strictly kept to 3 disciples, and it could be when one dies, he could replace it. But I think Orsted implied that you can't do that. Anyways, I believe this chapter right here takes place after. This is a future point. That in the next volume, we're going to go back in time a little bit before this happens. Because I still think that turning point needs to end before he can start talking to Geese and getting his next set of people to work together to go after Rudius and Orsted, presumably. Now, the other thing could be that I was wrong about that, and that that's not actually the turning point, or again, that he can change people midway. Why I think that the turning point has happened and Ariel may not die is because he's upset. The man god is upset. Ah, what's the matter, Chief? You're looking pretty gloomy today. Go on, tell me all about it. Now, it could be that my theory is correct, and that turning point still has to come around, and that chapter is going to have Ariel die, and right here is afterwards, and the man god's manipulating Geese to think that he needs help. But it could also be that he is right here admitting defeat. I failed that turning point, and now I need to move on to the next one. And he's mad, and he's talking to Geese, and he's like, "Shut up! I'm mad right now. I need you to help me out. Next turning point is I need to take down Rudius, or there's something coming up that I need Geese's help with." And I know Rudius and Ors is going to be involved, so I need to make a band of guys that's going to be able to fight against him for my next thing that I need to change. But either way, it is indicating that he is upset. And again, it could be both ways. It could be both ways, technically. What else? It's like such a short chapter, and it just absolutely... I'm super mad about this chapter, by the way. I'm not too happy about the idea of, one, that possibly Geese is going to be turned into a disciple and attack Rudius, but two, the idea that, they're putting together a band to go after Rudius, which really does suck as well. But yeah, my current prediction is that next volume, first chapter is turning point. Like literally right when it opens up, turning point. Because again, my theory still stands that I think that the previous turning point is not, it should have been completed before he's talking to Geese. Again, if Ors is correct about that, he could be wrong. And again, it could be an aspect of when one dies, he's able to talk to another one. And he's already getting the next one set up and getting ready to go. But he would have to create the next turning point to have that next destination before he closes up the previous way, you would assume. If it's all like mechanisms like that. I mean, I'm really kind of back and forth on putting it into like a system that has to go and play through, like Orsid sort of indicated, or if it being something that's very flexible. And again, by all accounts so far, it's kind of pointing at this idea that the man god's very kind of simple in like creating those turning points, seeing that future, and then assigning his people and sending them out to do what they need to do in order to reach this point that he wants to get to. The last thing in here that I was very curious about is at some point he points out, "Look, last time I did you a solid, things went real bad for me. You do remember what happened to my hometown, right?" And again, if this is Geese, this is sort of implying something that we're going to get into eventually about his past. It's implying that his hometown, something really bad happened. Last time I did you a solid, it went bad for me. Remember what happened to my hometown. So it at least implies this idea that he was doing something for his hometown, the man god was involved, and things went south. Things went real bad for me. Or it could possibly be because he was helping the man god with a task, something, his hometown didn't like him anymore. Like maybe he helped somebody or helped something or helped some group that maybe turned on his hometown or caused the destruction of his hometown, or that his hometown no longer likes him and exile him because of it. I'll be interested to see what that whole thing plays out. But it is kind of interesting that he's pointing out that I helped you with something and it turned out bad for my hometown, but yet he's still willing to help out the man god with this new thing. That's surprising. And again, it does imply the idea that he helped them out with the whole labyrinth thing, and maybe that was just for the man god to regain his trust. No, I'm sorry that whole thing happened. Let me help you out with this, and that will help me gain his trust for the next thing. That is a very curious question as well. Anyways, I could go on and on with theories. It's like such a vague chapter, but yet has so much in there that I can really dig into. But anyways, that's my thoughts on extra chapter ? And that, again, is the conclusion of Volume 17. Thank you guys so much for joining me through the journey of Volume 17. That's a wrap for this one, and I hope that you guys will stick around for jumping into 18. Again, like I said earlier, I don't recall seeing anybody talk about 18, so we'll see if it's a good volume or not. I'm sure the chat's going, yeah, that's actually a really good one. Probably forgotten seeing people hyping up 18, but we'll see. But I'm looking forward to it, to crack it open. But until then, greatly appreciate you guys for dropping by for the premiere. As always, hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. If you have not hit that like button yet, shame on you. Again, like I said earlier, even if you can't support monetarily, which I don't want people to support monetarily if they cannot do it unless they're able to, basically. But I do greatly appreciate that. Like I said, Gearless, Noah, and Kusha last week was really fantastic. And again, all the Patreon supporters that help monetarily monthly with that is greatly appreciated. But yeah, even if you can't do that, like helps. Telling your friends, kind words, and especially likes help out the channel, and I greatly appreciate everybody that does it. But yeah, with all that said, until the next Mushoku Mondays, y'all take care. The two cracked up about that before Luke took considered his. The two cracked up about that before that meant Orsted was going to keep him. That meant Orsted was going to keep sending him on different missions. That meant Orsted was going to keep sending him on missions. That meant Orsted was going to keep sending him on missions. He's already established that with the Sacred Beast. But you could tell that he was Paul's father.